When you think of British wealth and land ownership, your mind probably jumps to the royal family. Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, vast estates across the country. But what if I told you there's a family you've probably never heard of that owns more prime real estate in the United Kingdom than the monarchy itself? Meet the Grosvenors, a dynasty so wealthy, so powerful, and so deeply embedded in the fabric of British society that they've managed to remain almost invisible to the general public. The head of this family, the Duke of Westminster, is one of the richest people not just in Britain, but in the entire world. And yet, most people couldn't pick him out of a lineup. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most fascinating and secretive wealthy families in the world. We'll explore how they built their fortune, why they own some of the most valuable land on Earth, and how they've managed to keep their wealth intact for over 300 years. This is the story of the Grosvenor family, the family that owns more of the UK than the royal family. The Grosvenor story begins not in the glittering ballrooms of Mayfair, but in the fields of Cheshire in northwest England. The family name itself comes from Le Grand Veneur, French for the master huntsman, a title that hints at their Norman origins following the conquest of 1066. For centuries, the Grosvenors were successful but unremarkable landed gentry. They owned estates, they farmed, they participated in local politics. They were comfortable, but they weren't extraordinarily wealthy. That all changed in 1677 with a marriage that would alter the course of British real estate history forever. Sir Thomas Grosvenor, a 21-year-old baronet, married 12-year-old Mary Davies. Now, before we judge this by modern standards, arranged marriages of young people were common among the aristocracy of the time, though the marriages weren't typically consummated until both parties were older. But here's what made this marriage extraordinary. Mary Davies was an heiress. And not just any heiress. She inherited approximately 500 acres of land just west of the city of London. At the time, this land was mostly fields, marshes, and a few scattered farms. It was rural. It was undeveloped. It was practically worthless. Except it wasn't. The land Mary Davies brought to the marriage would eventually become two of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the world, Mayfair and Belgravia. We're talking about the area that includes Grosvenor Square, Park Lane, and streets where a single townhouse can sell for £50 million or more. To put this in perspective, imagine if your ancestor in 1677 had accidentally married someone who owned what would become Manhattan's Upper East Side. That's essentially what happened to the Grosvenors. But the Grosvenors didn't just get lucky. What they did next was what separated them from dozens of other landed families who squandered their inheritances. They held on to the land. They developed it carefully. And most importantly, they never sold it. Here's where the Grosvenor fortune gets really interesting and where we need to understand a uniquely British property system called leasehold. In most countries, when you buy property, you own both the building and the land it sits on. Simple, right? But in Britain, particularly in London, there's a system where you can own the building but lease the land from someone else. These leases typically last 99, 125, or even 999 years. The Grosvenors pioneered and perfected this system. Starting in the 18th century, as London began to expand westward, they didn't sell their land. Instead, they offered long leases to developers and wealthy individuals who wanted to build townhouses and estates. Think about what this meant. A developer would pay for the privilege of building on Grosvenor land, construct an expensive townhouse at their own expense, and then the Grosvenors would collect rent on the land for 99 years. At the end of that lease, the building and the land would revert back to the Grosvenors, who could then lease it out again. This created a perpetual income machine. The Grosvenors didn't have to build anything. They didn't have to maintain the buildings. They just collected checks generation after generation. And as London grew from a city of 600,000 in 1700 to over 8 million today, and as that marshy land became some of the most desirable real estate on Earth, those checks got bigger and bigger and bigger. Today, the Grosvenor estate owns approximately 300 acres in Mayfair and Belgravia. That might not sound like much, but we're talking about areas where land is valued at tens of thousands of pounds per square foot. This includes Grosvenor Square, which has been called the most prestigious address in London. It includes Eaton Square, where average property prices exceed £6 million. It includes some of the most expensive retail space in the world on Bond Street and Oxford Street. Walk through Mayfair today, and you'll see the Grosvenor crest, a gold wheat sheaf on a blue background. On lampposts and street signs, subtle markers of who really owns the land beneath your feet. But the Grosvenors didn't stop with London. Over the centuries, they accumulated vast rural estates across Britain. The family seat is Eaton Hall in Cheshire, a massive country estate spanning about 11,000 acres. They own farmland, forests, and villages across northwest England. And in the 20th century, they went global. Today, the Grosvenor Group owns property in more than 60 cities across the world, including premium real estate in San Francisco, Tokyo, Sydney, and Vancouver. They become one of the world's largest private property companies. The Grosvenors weren't content with just being rich. They wanted social status to match their wealth. Through the 18th and 19th centuries, they climbed the aristocratic ladder through a combination of strategic marriages, political service, and generous donations to the right people. Sir Richard Grosvenor was created Baron Grosvenor in 1761, then Earl Grosvenor in 1784. His grandson was made Marquis of Westminster in 1831. And finally, in 1874, the family reached the pinnacle. Hugh Lupus Grosvenor was created the first Duke of Westminster. The title Duke of Westminster might not mean much to Americans, but in the British aristocratic hierarchy, it's huge. There are only 24 non-royal dukes in the United Kingdom, and it's the highest rank below the royal family itself. The Duke of Westminster is automatically one of the most prestigious figures in British society. The title comes with seats in the House of Lords, historically, invitations to state occasions, royal weddings, and coronations. It's a golden ticket to the highest levels of British establishment life. But here's what's interesting. Unlike most aristocratic titles, which became separated from wealth over the generations, the Duke of Westminster title remained intrinsically linked to the Grosvenor fortune. The title didn't just confer status. It came with one of the largest property empires in the world. Gerald Grosvenor inherited the title and fortune in 1979, and he transformed the Grosvenor estate from a British property company into a global real estate empire. Gerald was known for being relatively approachable for a billionaire duke. He served in the Territorial Army, he worked for the family business, and he was involved in numerous philanthropic causes. He was also a close friend of the royal family. Prince Charles was a personal friend, and Gerald was godfather to Prince William. Under Gerald's leadership, the Grosvenor Group professionalized and expanded dramatically. He brought in expert management, diversified internationally, and turned the family estate into a modern corporation, while still keeping it entirely privately owned. When Gerald died suddenly of a heart attack in 2016, he was worth an estimated £9 to £10 billion, making him one of the richest men in Britain. When Gerald died, his son Hugh inherited everything. And I mean everything. The title, the estates, the property empire, all of it. Hugh was just 25 years old. Overnight, Hugh Grosvenor became the richest person under 30 in the world. Forbes estimated his net worth at around $12 to $13 billion. Though the true figure is difficult to pin down because the Grosvenor estate is privately held and doesn't publish detailed financial statements. Imagine being 25 years old and suddenly owning large chunks of London, Liverpool, and dozens of other cities around the world. It's the kind of inheritance that makes even royal princes look relatively poor in comparison. Now, 33 years old, Hugh has kept a relatively low profile compared to other billionaires his age. He's not posting on social media, buying football clubs, or launching rockets into space. He's continued his father's work, running the family business, and engaging in philanthropy. He's also deeply connected to the royal family. Hugh is godfather to both Prince George, the future king, and Prince Archie, the son of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. When Prince George was christened, it was widely seen as a signal of just how important the Grosvenors are to the royal family. In 2024, Hugh married Olivia Henson in what was called the Society Wedding of the Year at Chester Cathedral. It was attended by royalty and the cream of British aristocracy, Yet the couple managed to keep much of it private, a hallmark of the Grosvenor approach to wealth and fame. One of the most remarkable things about the Grosvenors is how they've managed to stay out of the spotlight. In an age of social media and celebrity culture, the Duke of Westminster is almost anonymous. There are billionaires who court publicity, who want their faces on magazine covers and their names in headlines. Not the Grosvenors. They've perfected the art of being invisible billionaires. They don't give interviews. They don't flaunt their wealth. They operate through trusts and corporate structures. This discretion has served them well. When you're not in the public eye, you're not subject to public scrutiny or criticism. The family's wealth is primarily held through the Grosvenor Group, a privately held international property group. It's structured in a way that's designed to protect the wealth across generations and minimize tax exposure. The group operates through several divisions: Grosvenor Britain and Ireland, managing the London estate and UK properties; Grosvenor Americas, with properties in the United States and Canada; Grosvenor Asia Pacific, with holdings in Asia and Australia; and Grosvenor Europe, managing continental European properties. Each division operates somewhat independently, investing in residential, commercial, and retail properties. The strategy is long-term. The Grosvenors think in generations, not quarters. Much of the wealth is held in family trusts, a structure that provides two key benefits. It protects the assets from being broken up through inheritance or divorce, and it provides significant tax advantages. When Gerald Grosvenor died in 2016, there was considerable press speculation about inheritance tax. In the UK, estates over a certain threshold are taxed at 40%, which should have meant a tax bill of about £4 billion. However, because most of the estate was held in trusts established decades earlier, the actual tax bill was likely far smaller, possibly zero on some portions of the estate. This use of trusts is entirely legal and has been a strategy of wealthy British families for centuries. It's also one of the reasons the Grosvenor fortune has remained intact when many other aristocratic families have seen their wealth dissipate. Now let's get to that claim in our title. The Grosvenors own more of the UK than the royal family. Is that actually true? It depends on how you count. The royal family's relationship with property is complicated. There are essentially three categories. The Crown Estate is a massive property portfolio worth about 15 to 16 billion pounds, including Regent Street in London, Windsor Great Park, and about half the UK shoreline. But here's the catch. The Crown Estate isn't personally owned by the King. It belongs to the Crown as an institution, and its revenues go to the Treasury, which then gives the royal family a percentage back as the sovereign grant. The Duchy of Lancaster belongs personally to the monarch and is worth about 700 million pounds. It generates income that the King receives. The Duchy of Cornwall belongs to the heir to the throne, currently Prince William, and is worth about 1 billion pounds. The royal family also has personal assets: Balmoral, Sandringham, investments, art collections, worth perhaps 500 million pounds to 1 billion pounds. So in terms of personal, private ownership, the Grosvenor family absolutely comes out ahead. The Duke of Westminster's personal fortune of 10+ billion pounds far exceeds what the royal family personally owns. Even if you include the Crown Estate, which the royals don't personally own, the Grosvenors rival or exceed that when you consider the global reach of the Grosvenor Group. But more importantly, the Grosvenors have something the royals don't: complete control. They can make business decisions, sell properties, invest in new areas, all without public scrutiny or government oversight. They're one of the last great private fortunes in Britain, operating with a freedom that even royalty doesn't possess. So what can we learn from the Grosvenor family's extraordinary success in preserving and growing their wealth across more than 3 centuries? First, location matters even more than you think. That 500 acres of marshland in 1677 became Mayfair and Belgravia. The Grosvenors got lucky with location, but they were smart enough to recognize its value and hold on to it. Second, never sell the land. This is the core Grosvenor principle. Countless British aristocratic families sold their London properties over the centuries to fund lavish lifestyles or pay debts. The Grosvenors held on, and that discipline made all the difference. Third, think in generations, not years. The leasehold system, the family trusts, the careful succession planning, all of it is designed to protect wealth not for a lifetime, but for centuries. Fourth, privacy is valuable. While other billionaires cultivate public profiles, the Grosvenors have understood that discretion and privacy allow you to operate with less scrutiny, less pressure, and fewer demands on your wealth. Finally, adapt while preserving core assets. The Grosvenors went from farmland to urban leases to global property investment. They evolved with the times while never losing sight of their core asset, land in prime locations. The Grosvenor story is ultimately about the power of land, the importance of long-term thinking, and how extraordinary wealth can be preserved across centuries with the right strategy and a bit of luck. The next time you're walking through Mayfair or Belgravia, look for those blue and gold crests on the lampposts. They're subtle reminders that beneath the glittering surface of London, there's a family that's been quietly collecting rent for over 300 years and shows no signs of stopping.